I'd asked you another question earlier, you didn't answer, and that has everything to do with the campaigns by Jubilee. It seems they're still making inroads in Western Kenya.
Very good. They commonly say numbers don't lie. During the Supreme Court deliberations or submissions, what Jubilee thought was going to happen was what happened in the year 2013 when Suomoto, by the decision of the judges, they chose to have a random check on certain presidential ballot boxes across the country.
Yeah.
So that is the angle that the Jubilee wanted to pursue because they knew what they had done a few days after the elections to those ballot boxes. Now, in the wisdom of the judges, they said instead of going the 2013 route, let us now engage in scrutiny of the documents that were used to record the results.
Yeah.
And you know what happened. They were shocked. And when we went to court, we said that a bombshell is awaiting this country. And the bombshell was delivered. And the judgment that was rendered by the judges reflected the magnitude of the bombshell. Now, immediately after the declaration, or rather the verdict by the Supreme Court, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta immediately convened a press conference.
Yeah.
Of course, we know how he delivered it. And immediately again went to Bama market for campaigns.
The same
And
day,
why,
yeah.
the same day. And, you know, the behavior in Bama, the clandestine behavior in Bama would not pass for a parental guidance. But that was then. So what we are essentially saying is out of panic, because they don't have the numbers, if election was to be conducted, Jubilee knows very well that they don't have the numbers. That is why they refused, in collaboration with IBC, for the servers to be open, because they know they are bereft of those numbers. So out of panic, they went around and they've been campaigning, of course, again, calling judges' names, and that has therefore created a buffer zone towards Kisii and Masai land. You know, he met the Kisii is not in Kisii, but he had to call them in some state function in.
Jared,
so what I'm essentially saying is that we are not bothered. Yeah, anytime election will be done in accordance with the laid down procedures and laws, we will defeat Uhuru Kenyatta. So that is why we know we have the numbers. They don't. That's why they're in a panic
But campaign
mode.
is also needed. Gladwell, you're going to react to that shortly, but at this hour, we're still following for you. Another story, and we do expect the leader of the majority in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, to have a press briefing any moment from now, and that has everything to do with that petition by Ngunjiri Wambugu seeking to remove Chief Justice David Maraga. At this hour, we also expect the InfoTrack research team to release some sort of a poll with regards to how Kenyans received that ruling by the Supreme Court, which annulled or invalidated the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta on August 8. But for now, let's link up with a senior political reporter, Duncan Khaemba, who is at our city center studio. Khaemba, good morning. We've seen those recommendations from the EU and team, and NASA is still adamant that they're not going to have any direct link with IEBC.
Yes, that was the development that actually came out last evening in the latest briefing from NASA principal Musalia Mudavadi, who was Raila Odinga's chief agent at the presidential ballot, and by extension, the national chair of NASA campaign team. Of course, that came as a surprise because earlier on in the day, we had just talked to IBC chair Wafula Chebukati, who had said that they'd mutually agreed to reschedule yesterday's meeting to a later date next week. First of all, with NASA, before NASA and Jubilee on board, then before they agree, now they thrash out all the sticking issues or outstanding issues. But in a surprise turn of events, we saw in the live broadcast Musalia Mudavadi saying that henceforth they are not going to engage IBC any further. They are not interested anymore, and the next avenue that they would want to engage NASA is in a national dialogue forum that will have all stakeholders, and it has to be done in public. So that is a new twist in as far as the back and forth is concerned. NASA IBC meeting, NASA Jubilee IBC meeting, and all that.
to the chair yesterday, and I'm sure you posed that question to him that, some of the NASA leaders are saying that they're not going to engage IEBC directly. What was his reaction?
Well, he was optimistic, and I actually cited the three engagements that have bounced. Of course, the other Friday, they were supposed to meet, it didn't happen. On Tuesday, they were supposed to meet, it didn't happen yesterday. But he hinted that yesterday's was a it was a mutual agreement, contrary to what NASA said. They said they clearly stated in not uncertain terms that they will not be meeting IEBC, and then they said they are not interested anymore to sit on the table with IEBC, and the only engagement they are going to do will be to engage them in a national dialogue that will be broad-based, therefore not limited to a NASA or NASA Jubilee affair with IEBC. This basically essentially means that perhaps NASA wants to bring on board civil societies, NASA wants to bring on board the church, NASA wants to bring on board all major stakeholders that have a stake in this particular election, and they are saying they now no longer want a boardroom deal. Therefore, they want everything laid on the table. It hints to what Musalia Mudavadi had said on Tuesday, that they want Jubilee and IBC to put their cards on the table. Then they'll also put theirs on the table so that they look at the manner, they look at all their standing issues with objectivity. But now for them yesterday to change tact and say they will no longer do those boardroom meetings. IEBC is sincere. IEBC is making cosmetic changes, and therefore what they are demanding is a national dialogue. Clearly, this will open a new front of political war between NASA and Jubilee.
Now, Khaimba, let's talk about that meeting between the envoys and the IEBC. You're speaking about, the likes of the US, British, and the rest. These envoys, some of their president and prime ministers had already congratulated President Uhuru Kenyatta after that August 8th elections. What are they saying this time around?
When you look at the raft of proposals they've done to IEBC, the recommendations, of course they are diplomatically calling them proposals, but in essence those are recommendations. And by and large, even the chairman said that these are people who largely and heavily fund IEBC operations. Therefore, it's like the sponsors were putting strict terms and conditions that must be met prior and during the October 17 fresh presidential election. Top on their lists, of course, they are talking about the issue of transmission of results, the results transmission system. They are talking about access, controlled access by all stakeholders to the results transmission system. They are talking about making elaborate plans at the constituency level, display of projectors, I believe, that whatever the ICT clerks will be keying in as final results in Form 34B, it has to be displayed on a big screen. They said that because of limited space, even themselves, they said that many of them could not even go near and look at that crowded place to see what exactly was being keyed in by the clerks. Therefore, they are saying next they want everything like a projector or a display, so that whether you are seated at the back of the room, you look at exactly what is being keyed in before it's locked and then fired to the National Tallying Center. That, among other raft of issues. However, this comes as NASA maintains that there will be no election on 17th of October. Whatever that means is a subject that we'll be pursuing in the course of the day to know exactly what do they want.
And Khaimba, we all know that the EU and all these other envoys directly fund IEBC in a way. So with all these recommendations, I believe there are about 18 of them, is IEBC keen to implement these recommendations?
I think they were sort of, they sort of handed them that recommendation, and given that they're the ones that heavily fund IEBC, apart from the Exchequer, clearly they know what they are recommending. Of course, we saw the memo, that hot memo from the chair to the CEO. The chair was actually pinpointing some glaring failures. For instance, how could all the about $1 billion plus, satellite phones to a tune of about $1 billion, that all of them failed to work during the August 8th polls, that how come 3 days to the general election on 5th of August, some came skits that the GPRS and the geofencing mechanisms went off mysteriously before, 3 days before the election, the same ones that were supposed to actually play an integral role in actually identifying that this particular kit was in Marsabit point A and in Marsabit point X. So there are glaring issues that I think they've recommended that must be done if the repeat or the fresh presidential election is to be above board. And as I said, given that they heavily fund IBC operations, then they know what they are recommending, and perhaps they know exactly. There is a statement that has been sent, it has been on, I think, on BBC by John Kerry of the Carter Foundation.
Yes.
Of course, in his statement, he has apologized to NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga for having pushed him to concede only for the anomalies that were later to be nullified by the Supreme Court. But again, he has congratulated him for pursuing legal redress, contrary to his initial stand. At the same time, they've also praised President Uhuru Kenyatta for accepting the judiciary's decision. However, they've asked him, they've condemned him, the manner in which he's continued to attack the Supreme Court with his troops. So it is a statement that sort of points to a picture like the observers, they are in a way trying to indirectly apologize to Kenyans, given the clean bill of health that they'd given the August 8th presidential election, and then only to be overturned later by the Supreme Court.
Khaimba, I think this time round, following that apology from John Kerry and team, the international observers and envoys are going to be a bit careful after that rerun on October 17th.
I think so, because even in part of the recommendations, for instance, they've called for retraining of IBC clerks. They are saying that a sample of about 18% of the Forms 34As, the manner in which they were being scanned, they've said those clerks, they need to be trained afresh on what scanning means. They are saying the proper scanning was not done. They are saying that 5% you could hardly read what exactly was being scanned, and therefore, in a way, perhaps they want to redeem their image, and given that this is an exercise, they had said, hallelujah, it was above board and all that, only for it to be nullified. Most probably, they now want to use this opportunity to play a critical role, and that could explain why they've given not 1, not 3, but 18 proposals or recommendations to IBC, which they say IBC has no choice but to implement if that particular poll is to be free and fair. Given that they fund, clearly those could be, it is what you can say, that will be the least, the irreducible minimum that they are giving to IBC. Perhaps they'll say, we are giving you funds for the repeat elections. This is what we want to do, and this must be done. So in a way, perhaps they want to use that exercise actually to sort of redeem their image.
The image, exactly. Thank you very much, Duncan Khaimba, for that comprehensive update. And at this hour, we're still following for you some, key stories. One from Parliament, where the majority leader in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, is expected to address a press briefing any moment from now, and we believe it has everything to do with that petition seeking to remove Chief Justice David Maraga. We also expect some info truck, to release a poll with regards, to that ruling that was made by the Supreme Court that invalidated the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, let me resume with our studio discussion. And Gladwell, we're talking about, Jubilee making inroads in Western Kenya. But before that, let's address the elephant in the room, and that has everything to do with IBC. NASA, once again, is talking about, having this kind of an open, structured talk. We still have only 31 days to the elections. Do you think we have enough time?
Yeah, Yusuf, from the look of things, and even from the discussion I'm getting here from my right honorable friend here, these people are using a lot of words to just want to say one thing, that we are not ready for elections. All these tactics, we have very little time, like you are putting it. We have 31 days to go. These 31 days, instead of people going down there to hoover votes from the public, they are seated down here, talking that they have numbers, assuming they have numbers, so that day when we do the elections, they'll be back again and say, tumeibiwa. The truth of the matter, what the president or the deputy president is doing in Western is trying to actually garner some votes from those people. And we cannot sit down with IBC, everyone else is there. I mean, they could have had some representations to work with whatever things they want there. And we see them doing campaigns elsewhere.
I think, Jared, that's why both NASA and Jubilee are invited by IBC, you know, to have some sort of talks before the rerun. Do you think, with this kind of fresh demand by NASA, do you think there's enough time to address that?
Firstly, there is only one election, that of the presidency,
yes.
That is to be made. It is not as complex as when you have to engage the 6 elective positions. We still have 31 days as according to IBC and Jubilee. For us in NASA, we are saying we have up to 31st of October. Printing of presidential ballot boxes don't take much time. You remember when the Court of Appeal delivered its ruling on who should print the ballot materials, that was just about a week, actually 5 days before the elections.
Yes.
And the presidential ballot boxes, having been given a nod by the Court of Appeal, were printed and delivered in the country in good time. So what we are saying is that the electoral enterprise, that franchise of elections, must be credible.
Yes.
For Jubilee is about bora uchaguzi. For us, we are saying uchaguzi bora. So whoever is going to conduct that uchaguzi bora must meet the demands and qualifications of a credible election. Now, Jubilee would want to very conveniently throw beneath the carpet the recommendations of the Supreme Court when they said that the election must be conducted in strict adherence to the laws.
Yeah.
Because what happened before was total violation of election laws. So, but, you know, that is not their business. What they are saying is NASA is boycotting the election. NASA would want to, you know, claim again. You know, a time is coming that they will be running to the Supreme Court. We are not going to the Supreme Court anymore because we've got the numbers.
But in their ruling, the Supreme Court also clearly indicated that it's IEBC who are going to conduct the rerun.
We have got no problem with that, absolutely. And we've not invited anybody else to do the election on behalf of IEBC. We've never done that. But what we are saying is that the process must be beyond reproach for the benefit of the Kenyan people. And let me make it clear. This election is not about Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta. This election is about the people of Kenya. We wouldn't wish to see a situation where the election is meddled again with, and some people have to run again to the Supreme Court with the same allegations. You know, already we've lost over 100 billion shillings in stock exchange. We have yesterday received the travel alert.
Saying it's about 250 billion now.
Oh yeah, I mean it, and growing.
Yeah.
We have already received travel alerts from the US. You know, putting caveats on travel of their people, and this country relies very heavily on tourism. So with all
that has everything with the prolonged election
calendar.
calendar.
Definitely.
The whole thing is this: if we actually appreciate that we are derailing our socio-economical activities in the country, then we should stop these delaying tactics. We go direct to what we want to do.
But NASA is clearly saying that IBC should, first of all, clean its house before conducting a rerun.
Cleaning house how? What time do we have to still appoint
NASA,
people?
European Union and US stated a similar thing yesterday.
Yes.
So it's not about us. You know, no country operates in a lacuna. You need partners and development partners as such.
Yes.
Very serious development partners who are actually the funders of IEBC came out clearly yesterday. And what they said mirrored exactly what we have been you know, preaching ever since the Supreme Court made its verdict. So it is only Jubilee wing that has very big problems when we say you must address issues bedeviling IEBC. Because that is how they benefit.
Now, Gladwell, the thing is this: where's the independence of IEBC? Because there are those who are saying, you know, the independence of IEBC is at stake. You know, after the ruling, NASA came out clearly saying that, you know, they're not going to an election with an IEBC as it is constituted.
Yes.
IEBC came up with a number of, you know, names forming some sort of a committee. Yes. Then Jubilee came out and clearly indicated that some of them are partisan. So where will this leave the independence of IEBC?
Yusuf, in this country, you wonder how an independent is an independent. you know, when you call a body independent, you don't know to what extent is it independent. For sure, IBC have had problems. We've had issues with IBC, with NASA coalition for a very long time. They are saying, do this, and then the government was able to change this one, they were able to change. Until this minute, still, you realize IBC has not gotten that independence that we are talking about. Even after the ruling, you realize they were having some silent and indoor meetings with NASA every now and then. And then we were wondering, what are they discussing? What is the independence?
She can
I think the
substantiate
IBC
those
chair
night
came out
meetings.
clearly and, downplayed those allegations.
They downplayed, yes. But you see, still...
Where's your evidence?
These people, I can tell you, the chairman for IBC, the CEO, actually, I cannot... They are being handled from some distances. Some people who are controlling them from afar.
Who are they?
We cannot know.
And this brings about the
propaganda.
question, Jared, that, IBC has been highly politicized. If you look at the commissioners, there are those who are seen as pro-NASA, there are those who are seen as pro-Jubilee.
Yeah.
So where will this leave the independence of IBC moving forward?
Well, let me pick it up from what you indicated. IBC, in the interest of delivering a credible election, came up with a project team.
Yes.
And the project team was to be headed by none other than the chairman himself. And once the names came out, we quickly saw what we call ethnic profiling from Jubilee. And they did indicate certain names that are perceived to be anti-establishment, to be those whom...
The reason was that some of those people in the committee were partisan. They didn't indicate anything.
That is what they said, but they didn't provide any kind of evidence. So what we are saying is that
intervention.
IBC being an independent body, of course, as she correctly says.
Yeah, Jared, hold on to that because we are about to cross over to government spokesman Eric Kiraitha, who is